Good morning. I'd like to first do some background on the commission and my role in it, then talk about some of the recommendations that came out of my task force, and then some of the changes that have gone on that really require a lot more attention to major issues in the future commission and where we might go from there. I was chair of the Science and Technology Task Force for the President's Crime Commission. Their first year, they had a task force on police, courts, corrections. They had one on measurement. And a year later, I got called, and somehow or other, that they said, would you like to chair a task force on science and technology? My response was that I don't know a thing about crime or criminal justice. They said, well, that's okay. We've got a lot of people who do. And that gave me the opportunity to ask a bunch of questions, getting less than adequate answers. I started doing some research. And the research accumulation started with a very small American Society of Criminology and 4,500 people at the last meeting or so. So the field has grown considerably. I recruited a team that were technologists of various sorts, but my own background is systems engineering, operations research, and we got technology in electrical systems, and of course lots of expertise in computers, which were really starting to blaze a path that wasn't at all appreciated where it has come to today. We also had a very good advisory committee of judges and expertise in the field. The commission did very little to articulate our role, so it was up to us. And we did what naturally came to us, and one of the first things was system. And the criminal justice system as a bunch of interacting parts having effect on each other and having effect on crime or effects on each other. We probably put together what was the first flow diagram of a criminal justice system, and it was repeated and built on by the Bureau of Justice Statistics, and LEAA, the Law Enforcement Administration that was created as a result of the Commission's recommendations, put a major emphasis on the system. We did operations analysis of police operations, and the major theme there was fast response. Some of the more recent work on more effective patrol was not yet on the table. So we looked at a variety of means of getting faster response, but also throughout the system, issues of information flow and similar analysis of court operations, the queuing in the courts contributing to crowding in the jails of pretrial detainees. And we also did some research on what we knew then about reducing recidivism of offenders. It was an interesting, there was a lot of analysis in the task force, but one of the strongest recommendations in retrospect was one that came out of looking at a phone book in Los Angeles when we wanted to call the police. We couldn't find the number of the police because there were 50 different numbers for police departments. We said there ought to be a single phone number. It was an easy resolution from looking at that 50 numbers on a single page. And AT&T said, no, we have a single number. It's called 0. That didn't work too well. And then somehow or other, they must have realized there was a profit potential in that. And so 911 became a major innovation that followed. A AT&T representative came to my office to tell me about it. He said, we're going to call it 911. And I said, oh, what's going to happen when I dial it tomorrow? he said, "Oh, it's not available yet." So we went to my phone, dialed it, and sure enough, someone said, "Hello?" And they weren't all ready, but they fully expected that there were going to be some heavy calls. Computers were clearly starting to show themselves. There were like 15 NCIC terminals at the time. And a major theme of our research was the criminal history record, which was being maintained to varying degrees at the state and at the federal. And the question, our advisory committee made it very clear that it would be inappropriate to have it located at the federal because of some of the things that had been done in using information to hold against people who might not do what they wanted. We had a very strong recommendation that the Commission adopted for research and statistics. Most departments at the time had an assistant secretary for science and technology. Nothing like that in the Justice Department at the time, and hardly any such at the moment even. But the budgets, NIJ was created, it has a $35 million budget, BJS has a $48 million budget, NIH has a $37 billion budget. So those efforts are clearly underfunded. Let's look at some of the technology changes that have occurred over the last 30 years. Computers and their availability and their performance has been a phenomenal growth, and that's where a major technology changes have occurred, and we have to know something about that, both for good in terms of collecting and processing information. The opportunity, what we now have dynamic information, information that can be moved from one point to another electronically rather than paperwork. Fingerprints can be taken and transmitted. One of the issues of concern in our study was tracking police cars. Where are they? How do we know who's closest? Police cars can now be tracked with GPS. So we now have hotspot policing, a development rather than simply randomized patrol, which was the situation 50 years ago. And of course, the widespread availability of fingerprints, license plate readers, and lots of technology that now serves the criminal justice system. And we have lots of records that are usable, and criminal history records, and they should, and we've seen the criminal justice system change dramatically as a result of the research on criminal careers, the research on risk assessment models, where we know who is likely to be a high risk and who is likely to be a low risk, electronic tracking of offenders. And the juvenile system has been impressive in that it has reduced its incarceration rate by half. The adult system hardly changed since 2000 after a major growth, so that we've seen very different responses to that. Court operations have changed the least, and top-level agencies, particularly in policing, are doing very well. There's a major new issues that have to be addressed and that the new commission should take on. They're drug abuse, the mentally ill, who are 20%. The drug abuse needs much more in the way of public health links, mental illness. The incarceration rate is so high that we really need some, and it's the one issue on which the left and the right agree, and it's something we really have to do something about. Police accountability is, in communities, a crucial issue, and the emergence of the digital environment is crucial. And there's one concern I have about the design for the commission, where the various caucuses who are polarized appoint 2 members each, and that is a risk of generating polarization of even greater degree in the commission. It would be great if the caucuses could get together, agree on what are the needs, and identify the people that would be addressing those issues in the system itself. I thank you very much.
Thank you, Al, for that introduction. Next up is Professor Jody Lane from the University of Florida, who will tell us where we have been with regards to juvenile justice. Jody?